Hi, everybody, and welcome back to the BTI podcast. Today, we are joined by Natalie Salas. She is an experienced service designer and a community builder based in Dubai. And we're very happy to have her on the show. She's been doing some amazing things career wise, but also very interestingly enough, building communities in the region as well. And has just had a very successful event. So, congratulations, Natalie, and welcome to the show.
Thank you, Jay. Thank you, Warren. It's a pleasure to be here talking all things service design
And more, and more.
and
I think
more.
we'll
Exactly.
probably go beyond.
Let's go beyond.
I think maybe I'm naive, but I think service design is still relatively a new term that is being used regionally. Although I think it's been around for a long time. I'm hearing it more and more. The reason I say this is because I'm hearing it more and more and more,
Hmm.
especially in the last, say, like 12 to 18 months. There's more events popping up around the topic of service design, more presentations that I've been seeing in the last 12 months around that topic as well. So for those who aren't familiar with service design, like what is it, and like what has your journey been like in
It's
service
been a
design?
very interesting journey. But you know what? It's quite funny because I actually never officially studied service design. I actually studied marketing. But what I loved about marketing was what they called at the time services marketing. And services marketing was all about designing intangible experiences. And my first hand experience, I would say, came really early, actually in the 2000s. I'm kind of showing my age now, during the infamous internet bubble. And I was working in investment banking at the time in London. The bank that I was working for was raising money for a particular internet e-commerce venture, and it was called Boo.com. Have you heard of it?
Yeah, I've heard of
You
that one.
have, Warren. Yeah, it's so for anyone that doesn't know, because it does go way back. Boo.com was supposed to revolutionize online fashion. Okay, and this was online fashion shopping in the late 90s, so 99, 2000. And it had edge features like 3D viewing of clothes and virtual shopping assistants. Imagine that in 2000. But the tech wasn't ready. I mean, even now you're just maybe seeing it now, all those years later, but the tech wasn't ready. So I was involved in doing the initial user testing back in the day. And at that time, customers couldn't even load a page properly. It was so cumbersome. And so no one could really buy anything. But what happened is that they burnt $150 million in less than a year. And it became like this legendary cautionary tale about how disconnected teams, tech hype, and a really poor customer experience can kill a promising business, because there was promise. And watching that firsthand, I would say, is where I really started to get really obsessed in terms of why user experiences fall apart across different touch points. And my curiosity went beyond that. I started working in other banks and working for intranets and working on online e-banking for high net worth individuals. And one of the reputations that I had that I wasn't was that I couldn't stay in my lane, because to be able to look even at an intranet or a online banking system, you have to look at all different levels of the zoom. But what I was made to do was look at a specific part or the product. But what I was interested in, it was how people get to that. What happens when they do something and they go after that? I was looking at really the bigger picture. And that essentially is what drew me to service design. I was essentially doing it all those years ago, but not knowing that it was called service design. But I would say I didn't know I was doing service design. I didn't know I had a service design mindset, which I think is very different. It's looking at things, it's looking at totality of things, and look at things holistically. And so that's my kind of historical timeline into how I kind of got into service design.
Nice. Yeah, it's an interesting journey, and I love that part where you mentioned how some you didn't know you was already doing it, right? I think
Yeah.
that has definitely been my experience of service design as well, Natalie, is that it's been around for a while, right? But I guess what Jay was kind of alluding to was the name, right? It's been giving an actual name now. It's kind of like given a bit more importance in the ecosystem of design. But yeah, I love that you was already doing it, but you just didn't realize, it's just like we're giving it a name now, and that's kind of what you're doing.
Yeah.
Yes, but in a way, it has its downside as well, right? Um, because there is the word design that comes after it, and when people perceive design, they see that more as, oh, does that mean it's UX design or product design? Um, but the definition of service design is very different, and in fact, I have a definition of service design if you would like me to explain that to you.
Yeah, please.
Because I don't really do the textbook definition because I think we've all heard that. But a few years ago, I was asked to bootstrap a service design function for a scale up remote first product company. And we had an offsite in Marrakesh, and I was asked to do a service design workshop. So this whole team that I was actually in was the product and design team. So they put service design in there, and I had to explain to them what was service design. And I was like, okay, how am I going to do this in a way that is relatable and people will get, in a very simple workshop? So this is the simple analogy that I have, and I call it the umbrella story. So I'm from London originally, born and raised. And if you guys have spent time there, you know that the eternal dilemma is the rain, right? You carry an umbrella all day, but then it doesn't rain, but then you leave it at home and then it pours down cats and dogs, right? But here's the thing about the umbrella. No one really wants the umbrella. People just want to stay dry when it rains. Okay? So the umbrella itself is the product. Staying dry is when you need it, and that's the actual service. So service design is about orchestrating every single element, right? So there's people, there's process, there's technology, there's systems, to ensure that the right service is exactly available when people need it. And in today's interconnected, impatient world, I would say, businesses can't afford fragmented and departmental thinking. Customers expect seamlessness, meaningful experience, end to end, or they'll walk away. So it's not looking at the umbrella; it's looking outside of that umbrella and looking at everything else across it. So what happens before, during, and after, and that is really the difference between, I would say, product-led thinking and service design thinking. In fact, a bit of theory, which I don't want to bore everyone with, but it did blow my mind away when I came across it. Because, as you know, and Jay, you work for a product company. Warren, who do you work for? Do you
Yeah,
work
I
for
also
what we
work for
call a
also a
product
product
company,
company.
right?
Yeah.
I always have a problem with that personally, because the label itself creates a wrong mindset if you think about it. Because it's as if customers wake up craving for your product, your widget. Spoiler alert, I don't think they do. And this aligns with this theory that I have become really obsessed about. And it's not something new, it's called service dominant logic. Have you heard of that concept?
First time.
Yeah,
First
first
time,
time for me
okay.
as well.
All right, so it's a powerful theory developed by two professors called Stefan Vargo and Robert Lush in 2004. In fact, look, I've got the book here. It looks really boring. So I'm going to kind of synthesize this very simply for you. So, what they argue is that value isn't something a business creates and hands over to a customer, all wrapped up in a pretty bow. Yeah? It's The value happens when it's co-created through an interaction with a customer. So most companies still follow this product dominant thinking. So let's go back to the umbrella analogy. We build the umbrella and we find the people to buy them. But customers don't want the umbrella. They want the outcome. Staying dry when it rains. So what service dominant logic does, it literally flips that around completely. And what it does, it starts with the customer needs first and it works backwards from there.
Yeah, I like that
Did
one.
I articulate that well, or are you like, I have no idea what you're talking about?
Yeah, no, this absolutely makes sense, right? And I think, if I can add to this, is I guess this is where sometimes teams or product teams, I've definitely noticed that they get stuck with not knowing what's the value we're trying to drive or what's the outcome we're trying to achieve for the customer, right? And I guess thinking more on the opposite side, like you were saying, can lead to those challenges, right?
Yes, and that's why if I was ever to be asked to work for a product company again and work in product design, I would flatly refuse. Please don't get offended, because I'm going to tell you why. Because I'm a service designer and I have a service design mindset, for me, I need the freedom to be able to zoom in and out across the entire experience. As soon as you put service design in a particular department, you're trapped already. Because you already have the biases surrounding there. You're like, oh, I'm service design from product to design. So already you're being perceived by other departments as being product led, even if you are a service design. So confining yourself to isolated touch points is the fastest way to limit real impact. It's like, trying to fix a particular hole, a certain hole in a sinking ship when there's another hole much bigger right next to you. So real service design, real transformation demands what we think and how we can work across organizational boundaries and not within them. And the problem that you have is that you have these silos that you have across a SaaS company, for example. You have sales, you have marketing, you have customer success, you have operations, you have product and design, you have engineering that sometimes is also separated out from product and design. And so you can imagine the complications it has to try and enact change when you're in a particular department. If you're overlooking the entire organization, you're more agile and you can move across, and people don't put you in a group, right? They don't put you in a department. They don't put you in a silo. So real service designers like me are really like birds. We don't have roots. We're not rooted in silos. We fly over. We fly over to different departments and work with them and bring people together, orchestrate, and get people to rally towards a particular journey to solve for. So that's essentially how I would love service design to be seen and used in an organization, really on a top-down level rather than bottom-up.
That's interesting. Because that's really making me think right now. So service design ultimately should be its own layer that is kind of horizontal, kind of across the org. However, from what I'm understanding from you is it's often positions or kind of coupled with something else, right? So it's always kind of maybe tied to product design or products and that kind of department, and therefore is constrained. However, based on what you're saying, I would say that it's probably kind of fundamental for product designers and even product managers to be thinking from a kind of service design lens.
Correct.
Regardless,
Correct.
right? Like that should be.
Regardless.
So I've got a question. How do you, if a company is interested in service design and they've identified that is something that they need, should they start to mobilize a service design apartment and position it horizontally? And I guess how easy or difficult would that be? Or should they be investing in training the teams that they have in service design so that they have an extra string to their bow?
I would say both at the same time, and that's what I was. That was my what I was trying to do in the product company, was trying to do both, but it was hard because I was also working bottom up at the same time. What most importantly, because you can't, service design is, it's a head count, right? When you build a team, and when people don't have the maturity yet, they're not going to be all of a sudden hiring 10 service designers to work across the entire life cycle. So what could I do as one service designer to try and make change? And obviously, the second one was really important, really, your second point, training people to have a service design mindset. Because if everyone had that, regardless of whether you were a product designer or a customer success manager or a sales in sales, if everyone had this image of their end-to-end experience, then everyone would be collaborating much easier together. And so what I was doing is, across all the departments, as much as I could, was I would focus on kind of my kind of my superstars within the department that really had a curiosity, that wanted to learn, and I would start training them up, giving them playbooks, teaching them also and guiding them how to look at things from a journey perspective, because that's how we look at it. Look, everything is a journey, interconnected journeys. And I implemented journey management, in fact, which we talk about a lot in service design, and how everything connect, how one macro journey and lots of micro journeys connect to one another. Within 1 year, I actually had created over 200 different journeys, so them out. And when you have one source of truth, right? Because when I started approaching different departments, everyone had their own version of a journey. So can you imagine if everyone had different versions of a journey, how in sync is everyone to try and actually enact value for the customer? It's going to be very difficult because everyone's got their own version. So what I was looking to do across the entire organization was to create sources of truth. And we mapped those sources of truth from 0 to 250 journeys. So we did pretty well, but it takes time. It takes time to apply journey frameworking and apply that scalable system. It's not something that happens overnight.
Yeah, it's definitely something that takes a lot of time, right, Natalie? And I think building on Jay's point there in terms of, because I agree with what both you're saying, right? I think the future, I think, of designers, especially in infrastructures that have, multiple layers, right? Like business facing, customer facing, back-end systems, security, all these different touch points. Because that's what service design helps to also do, is like build those kind of business journeys, right? And that, as you were saying, the frameworks to map out those journeys, right? To really build a full picture. But yeah, I guess the question is, Natalie, is like, for someone that wants to get into service design, or the product designer that wants to think more about the business and go into service design, what are some of the key things that you've learned, or the tips that you could provide someone to look into? Like, what are the key things that they should start thinking about now?
Yes, well, look, there are many academic studies that you can undertake now in service design. And there's Service Design College. There's also in Milan, they have a very good service design cohort. So academically, you can actually study it now. But I've never done anything the traditional way. And if I was to advise a product and design team, for example, about how to also have a service design mindset. You don't have to be qualified and have a certificate for it, because what's most important, as I say, is your mindset. And I did a talk actually back in January about the Alchemist mindset. And if you have that, that kind of in nature will flip you to a service design mindset. And there are, within an Alchemist mindset, there were like 3 layers to that. One of them was, I'll start with the first. You have the apprentice, right? So an apprentice can be, let's use the example of a product designer, yeah? So they deliver what you ask for, okay? Nothing more. Beautiful interfaces, looks very beautiful. Polished, but you don't influence, right? And you don't actually influence what's being built. Then you have a strategist, where you challenge the brief. So PM can say, oh, we need to do this on the roadmap. But instead of saying yes, you say, but are we solving the right problem here? And here is that type of mindset, and is when you start influencing business decisions, not just design outcomes. And I think that's really, really important, especially now, where, and I know we'll talk about this later, Joe, when we're talking about the debate about AI leading design. Designers need to go beyond design. They need to have a strategic way of talking with other stakeholders. And then you have the alchemist. I love that. I don't know why I've always been fascinated by the alchemist, because they don't just challenge, they really transform. They transform industries. Think, okay, easy, obvious one, Johnny Ive with the iPhone, right? It wasn't just pretty, was it? I mean, it looked pretty cool, but it reshaped how we communicate with the iPhone. And ultimately, alchemists transcend ego. They transcend disciplines and departments, and they redefine what's possible. And I said also in that same talk that most of the people in this room won't have a job in 5 years, but there will be others shaping the future, because it's not about just delivering good work, right, and being extremely talented. It's about how you think more than anything. And the provocative truth is that the best designers of the future will actually not be called designers at all. They'll be alchemists, they'll be strategic thinkers, shaping entire systems. And now we're getting into systems thinking now, right? Which is an even larger zoom. And that's where the designers of the future will be.
You mentioned so much there. So effectively, what you're saying is everyone will kind of go into alchemy. Is it? I think that's the word.
Yes.
That's the word, right? I love that kind of strategist kind of part. I think it was like the middle part. So you go from kind of being someone who isn't influencing at all, and then to being someone who's a strategist, because you're kind of questioning the problems that are being solved, right? Then you go into alchemy, where you're really transforming tangibly. Like, if you're speaking to someone who's working in a product company, how do they become the alchemist? Because on my day to day, I interact with a lot of strategists, right? Like, whenever we're on a project or something's kicking off, whatever, you always hear, what is the problem we're solving here? Are we solving the right problem? Like, you hear that all the time. But this alchemy side is like really transformative kind of person. Like, how would they kind of operate? And I guess, how can you really start to become one?
Yeah, and I think it starts with the first question that you ask yourself. Because if you say, what's the problem to solve here? You're just looking at the problem to solve. But if you're looking to transform an entire experience, then you're starting from a completely different starting point. So again, it's hard to explain, but and I'm not being scientific here, but it is like psychologically, you're switching your mindset to a different starting point. If you think what is possible, then your mind becomes more expansive immediately. And I think, again, titles are just so bad. And I think also for the young generation of product designers, because they say they're a product designer and then they are only a product designer. What leadership need to do for the young designers of today and for the future is to help them have that alchemist mindset and think beyond as well. Of course, they need to learn the tools of the trade. It's normal, right? You have to kind of, okay, let's start and go for it. You go through a journey, but it doesn't mean that you don't mentor them to have an expansive and an inquiring mind right from the very beginning. And I think that's really important. It's not just about helping a designer be technically good. It's about having that expansive way of thinking as well.
Are there any like particular questions that like someone could ask to start to dip their toe into kind of alchemy?
Yeah, well, first of all, I feel that we're progressively moving into a very binary world, and that's not great. And it's not great. We limit our thinking here at all, completely. And so I would, as a leader, as a mentor, I would always challenge people to critically think about anything that they're doing, and to also not be afraid of saying something that could potentially offend someone. Because there's a way to have an open and respectful discussion. Disagreement is important to have. And I would help the young young designers to build their confidence in how they talk, how they think, how they structure their thinking. And I think that's I would say maybe I kind of raced ahead here. It's how do we structure our thinking to be able to articulate an idea that you have? Because you may have great, as you say, technical ability. They may have, unbelievable talent, but if they don't know how to express that verbally in a business context, you're always seen as the designer that does pretty things, but you're unable to connect with the business, with numbers, with data, with what the CEO is looking for, which is the bottom line. So there's a great education that you can give in the product and design world, and I'm saying more on the designer's model and product. With product are more, very business orientated. But I think for everyone to have this more expansive and inquiring mind in a world where it's becoming progressively binary.
Yeah, Natalie, I'm really thinking a lot about this because you made some really great points here. And I think I'm wondering though, do you feel that this is more of a individual's problem, or do you think it's more like a leadership challenge? Because I'm just thinking about how I've seen organizations set up, right? Because a lot of the time, the area or the feature or the KPI is almost set by leadership. So it's like we're already siloing individuals to like focus on a very specific metric, And to your point earlier, it's like we almost need to free the birds, right? It's like, do we stop thinking about a very specific area or metric or problem that we're trying to solve and actually think more about giving individuals more freedom? It's like maybe saying, hey, your focus is the app. Drive us some additional revenue, right? How are you going to do it? Or how are you going to, like, do you know what I mean? Maybe give them some different areas they can focus on. So come on to my question. Do you feel like it's more of a leadership issue, or do you think it's more of like an individual in teams that needs to break out of that mold?
I do think it's a problem also with leadership. Let's be honest here. Let's have some honest conversations. But who is it? The problem is who has the courage to go against the CEO and challenge that CEO and have that conversation in the right way. Because if it's done the right way, if the thought process is structured, then you're able to have a constructive conversation. So, but I do think that, and you actually come up with a very good point, because how is innovation happening otherwise? And I think we have to look at the definition of what is the definition of innovation for a CEO, and what is the definition of innovation in a product and design team. I believe there'll be two completely different things. But if you are siloing people to do, I want you to do this to achieve this KPI, you're never going to have innovation. And so it really frustrates me when there's an innovation team and they're actually not innovating at all. They're just basically saying, we're just doing what the CEO is asking me to do, but they're not really looking at the Zoom, or they're not even digging down into a problem to create something more valuable to the customer. And that's where I really think first principles really come into play here. And Elon Musk is a big fan, for example, of first principles, because that is where you really become an alchemist, right? When you go to the root truth of a problem, that's when you can really say, aha, this is how we can innovate. So yeah, to kind of answer your question and wrap that up, it's a problem with leadership, but the only person that can truly limit their own potential is yourself. It's yourself. So I would say you are the master of your own destiny, right? So you can say, oh, it's leadership that's blocking me. You can give all the excuses you want in the world. But ultimately, you really, really want to if you have your own North Star or something, only you have the power to be able to do that. And sometimes it's hard to kind of see that you actually do have the power. But I don't think many people feel that empowerment.
I like that summary, Natalie. It's almost like the individual needs to focus on getting to leadership to change the setup, right? Like that's their goals. They need to kind of see how they can break that mold. But it's only going to be the individual that can impact it, right? Yeah, leadership's doing what they're doing. Hopefully they see to change things or to kind of, innovate a bit differently, but that's not always going to be the case, right? That's brilliant. Natalie, look, you've been in the region. We're talking about the UAE here, right? In Dubai for some time. Would you say service design is a little bit different in the region? Would you say it's more or less similar to the UK, or are you having the similar challenges here?
Okay, well, I've been in the UAE for 18 years now. I left the UK in 2006. But why have I been here for 18 years? And there's two reasons why. First of all, I feel that the UAE is a very exciting place. Since 18 years now, it has not stopped its path in being ambitious and innovative and totally obsessed with providing new and innovative experiences. However, I do think there's still a misunderstanding. I think many businesses and many projects that I see, also on a government level, they get confused with service designers as CX. And so you never see service design actually explicitly written out. You see CX transformation. So So I do think it's still, from a maturity scale, on a superficial level. And I feel there's still a lot of work to be done in educating private and public sector on the holistic nature and the value that service design can bring in terms of aligning that front stage experiences with backstage processes and technologies. And why do I still think it's still superficial? Because I think everyone's running so fast that they prefer to cut the corners and maybe look at it later. But there's some downsides to that. So let's go to the private sector, for example. And I think there's such a missed opportunity in the startup stage, right? Before it even gets to scale up. If you go to any incubator and you look at what their roadmap is to go to market, you will not see journey management or kind of a service design concept to kind of look at things holistically. It's not there because they're so like, no, you've got to go to market. You've got to start, get your MVP out and, your product out and, start getting revenues. And then what happens is that they'll think about service design when they've gone maybe in series, B, all right, on a scale up. But what they've done already is they've already created the silos, they've already created the systems, they've already created debt everywhere. And it's so much harder then to fix things. Imagine if you had your journey framework right at the beginning. And yes, it can be light, it won't be complete. But if everyone already has the mindset of rallying towards one source of truth, and then you evolve it together, it's so much easier because everyone is already seeing from the very beginning how things connect to one another, and everyone's working in orchestration with one another. So I feel it's a missed opportunity here. Now, I don't know how that's working in the UK. I cannot say. I've not been there too long. I can only speak here. But I really want to speak to some incubators and accelerators and kind of say how much much value they would get from doing something like I just explained right at the beginning before they go to market. So that's my take on the UAE.
I do wonder if that's just the Kent UAE problem or just a general startup problem, because you do hear
Europe,
all the time, right?
Yeah, it's fast here, and that's why I like it, because they're forward thinking. In Europe, it's slow. They're more mature markets, but they're slow. And I think that's why, Jay, Maureen, I think you're here as well. It's fast, and I'd rather have fast and firefight, to be honest, than slow and actually never get things done.
It's interesting.
There's pros and cons to both.
No, it's interesting. It's interesting. Like, because I think with the startup culture in general, because you listen to all these founder stories, like I started DoorDash, and for instance, and I was knocking on people's doors myself instead of doing, having a fleet of delivery drivers and things like this. And you hear those kind of stories all the time where founders are doing things that don't necessarily scale, but they're trying to just get to market quickly, like you said, test the product, generate revenues as quickly as they can, prove that this business is viable. And then once they get their funding, then they start thinking about stuff. But then in parallel, they're building up all this debt that you mentioned. Now, I kind of wonder, how do you sell the benefit of actually doing all of that upfront stuff first, right? Because I think from a founder's perspective, getting from 0 to 1, we can have a product shipped in like 3 months. But then when you start talking to them and saying, well, make sure you have these systems of how you can handle customer service, like what if something goes wrong? What if a rider has an accident? Like what happens that night? I think for a founder, it might sound overwhelming and like complex, but like, how can you convince them that it's actually, slowing down to speed up in a sense?
Yeah, I mean, that's a really good question. And I think it's because service design has always been seen as being slow. But now with journey management software, with AI aiding research, things can be done really, really quickly. You can now just you do a bunch of user interviews or user research, and it already would kind of map that into a journey for you. Whereas before research, you had to kind of then do the synthesis, do the tagging, and no one has time for that. No one has time for that. But things can be done so rapidly now that I just don't think they've seen the opportunity of how things can be seen so quickly. And again, you don't have to have big systems, enterprise systems and things like that from the beginning. And that's what the problem is. They invest in these huge enterprise systems right at the beginning, where they could maybe start more lightweight. If you go through the process of mapping out your kind of your total experience or your your life cycle with a startup mindset, you wouldn't have to spend. You could be more agile, because once you start committing to big systems or enterprise softwares, you kind of become a slave to it, and then you can't really get out of it afterwards. So you're actually saving money, cost right from the very beginning, and extending and having the potential to extend your runway, in fact.
Yeah, and I agree. I think it's definitely something that I've seen in the region, and I think so much funding is given here, right? I think that's the difference I've seen as well in Europe, where it's so easy to get funding and buy these big enterprise systems, right? Without actually mapping the land first and thinking, hey, we could start small, like you said, Natalie, right? Then we can get that later on once we've kind of proved the concept and it's working up and running. Yeah, I guess the question I had for you on that, Natalie, is you mentioned a little bit about AI there, just kind of changing course. I just want to come back to that point there. So how do you feel AI has benefited you? Because we spoke about your service design mindset, right? We spoke about how you kind of think about things a little bit differently. How have you integrated AI into your overall process on a day-to-day basis? Like, how has it helped you to move a lot faster, other than what we said, the research and things like this? Are there other areas it's helped you to move fast as a service designer?
Gosh, yeah. AI has completely transformed the speed in which I work. So again, service design has always had this reputation of slowing everyone down, because, oh no, we need to see. But in fact, it's the opposite now. It really is the opposite. So what do I use in terms of, if I had to have my service design tech stack, if you will? So for example, research, even like secondary research. I mean, so, okay, I created my own bot, my service design bot, my journey management bot, where I just, every single podcast, everything that I find interesting and insightful, any type of documentation, any type of PDF, any book, that all goes into my bot. And anything that I need to do with around service design, as I say, it's such a broad subject, service design, but in general, in terms of theories and practices and things like that, it goes into a bot, and I can talk to it, and I'm able to generate strategies, quite quickly. In fact, I would say rough strategies, because it won't give me the in-depth detail that I need, but it's enough for me to work from, because I already have the experience of doing something the slow way. So I can see where AI has its pitfalls. I can see where the hallucinations are. I can see many of those things. In terms of, as I say, research, again, it does the synthesis really, really quickly, and it can categorize things at a rapid pace. So my research time is reduced significantly. I also work in a lot of more strategic projects. So I never necessarily work in pure service design projects, because, in fact, there's not that many of them, because I'm a consultant. So there's not that many of them going around. So that's why everything that I do I do it with a service design mindset. But in my strategic consulting work, I'm able to map out presentations in terms of storylines. It won't design the presentations, but it already creates like the kind of the structure and the order that I can then take and put into, a proper presentation. Strategic recommendations. I'll use Perplexity for secondary research, and I don't have to spend ages finding different sources. It will consolidate it all for me. So I embrace it with open arms, because timescales in projects in the consulting world are so tight now. And before it was like, oh, we can't do research because we haven't got time. But now I can. I can fit it in now and still give that, and then give that value to the client. So yeah, that's I embrace it wholeheartedly, and cannot wait to use more tools. I'm experimenting with new tools every day. I'm now looking at Google AI Studio and seeing how that could benefit me. I'm looking at, I have so many subscriptions, but I mean, obviously ChatGPT I have the premium version that I use because I want to really, I use it a lot for logic and reasoning, because that's really important in the work that I do. So I invest in the tech stack that I need to be able to deliver the work that I want to deliver for my clients.
Yeah, and I hung on to one thing you mentioned throughout that, Natalie, where you mentioned the point about a myth there about how it's almost like the process, so you know what to input, right? And you mentioned there's a myth that AI is just going to solve people's problems, right? Do you want to elaborate on that? I could feel something was there, Natalie. I could feel there was like a point you were trying to make there.
Yes, I'm saying that if you don't know the craft of what you're in can be in product design as well. It can be you can. I think something that you said, wasn't it, Jay? Rubbish in, rubbish out. When last week at the event. So for me, it's you have to be a good prompt engineer, if you will, to be able to get the right output that you need. So in terms of education in AI, whether it be in product design, product, or or service design, I feel it's important that those that are less experienced or have less experience are guided into how to use AI in the most productive and effective way to be able to give them outputs that they can tangibly work with to deliver better results, rather than them putting in a prompt and then saying, okay, that's great, I'm just going to use that, because I'm never happy with the first outcome of anything that comes out of ChatGPT. Never. I'll continue and continuing until I feel that there's something there. That doesn't mean I take hours doing it. I still half my time in the work that I have to do. It's just experience in knowing what you want to get out of it, and not blindly believing that AI is going to give you what you need on a plate like straight away.
Oh, that's interesting. And I don't think it was me actually. I think it might have been
Wasn't
Tim.
it you?
It might have been
Okay.
Tim Daines. Yeah, very very clever guy. Very clever guy. Hopefully we'll have him on the show soon as well. But yeah, on this AI point, it's obviously very useful, and there's a lot of talk as to whether or not it will have the ability to do almost all of the work, if not all the work. From a service design perspective, do you believe that in the future AI potentially could lead service design, I suppose, and be able to kind of make certain choices and decisions for organizations who kind of want to kind of scale quickly and cover all bases?
I think AI will definitely will be able to make much better recommendations. But I feel that in service design, there's so many layers and interconnected points and nuance that you will still need a human to make sense, to kind of add the kind of the finishing, to finesse it, if you will. Because when you have, if you go kind of down into the various layers, when you're looking across journeys such as systems, such as process as well, and people, policies, you would have to have a bot. It won't even be called a bot then, it'll be called something else that will be able to take all of that information and digest it and be able to then churn out a recommendation or a solution, or it'll be able to, I think it would be able to give, like product in design, a number of variety of options. But then you'll be able to say, okay, we've got all of these possibilities, but now the human has to kind of then take it to the next level. I don't think between now and the next few years, service design has anything to worry about. But for me, it's about, if that's why I was talking how systems design is equally important. You have to evolve. You have to be the alchemist. So that you've got, if you have to look at different levels of the Zoom, right? You've got UI, then you've got UX, then you've got service design that looks at the totality of the experience, and then you have systems design that looks at the totality of the whole ecosystem. And there's so many moving levers that connect to one another and everything. And that is another ball game altogether. And so service design will go into kind of morph into more systems thinking, which at this moment in time, I don't see AI being able to do right now.
What is systems thinking? Because it's a term that I'm hearing all the time, and I'm sure like many people listening are probably thinking the same thing. But ever since AI has come about, people are saying that we need to become systems thinkers, and you just kind of clearly stated or kind of alluded to the fact that there must be a difference between service design and systems thinking or systems design. So
let's look at Kareem. Okay, I know there's different verticals of Kareem now. It's not just about having a car when you need it. Okay, so but let's look at cars and transportation and moving people around. Right, you don't just look at getting a car arriving at your house for when you need it to take you to a destination. You start looking at the map of the city. You start looking at how city planning affects transportation. You start looking at traffic systems. You start looking at the wider picture. Okay, so then from cars, you have, you look into the sustainability of transport, and you start looking at the electric, autonomous driving, and you start seeing how each element then starts linking to one another, and it ends up being a bigger picture. And then it even starts going into the environment and the pollution, and because everything all starts to interconnect to one another. And when you start looking at things from a hugely systemic perspective, imagine just looking over Dubai, right, and looking and seeing where does Kareem fit into this big ecosystem. You'll start with one thing and you realize it connects to another thing and then connects to another thing. And when you start seeing the different levers, and if one lever goes one way, what happens then to transport times or something like that, you can start solving for much more significant problems. But at the moment, everyone kind of looks in their little world, But if people start kind of really looking kind of really bird's eye, you see how where you are in that whole ecosystem and how you can and where impact can be made across different layers, across different levers. I started studying it, I would say, about 4 years ago. There's some great systems minds in Belgium, and I was in Brussels learning from a very very experienced professor and practitioner. And I came back to Dubai thinking Dubai's not ready for this yet. Also because it's such a slow it has to happen from, I think, a government level first, and then like trickle down to companies. But I think that systems thinking is quite theoretical, and I think systems thinking, the whole education of system thinking, needs to get more pragmatic. I feel it's too theoretical at the moment, and the way that the templates and processes of using systems thinking needs to be simplified to be able for a less mature market to start applying the techniques. They're very powerful, but I feel that they're very complicated at the moment.
Interesting. I mean, kind of just listening to you speak just kind of says to me that I feel like we're at a cusp of a shift where AI is actually an unlock for systems thinking. So you mentioned that the process is really slow, right? To become a systems thinker, you need to think very large scale. The people that were, say, experts in this field were probably the few, right? Like professors, like you mentioned, right? Like the few people had that level of expertise to kind of really kind of be able to kind of understand how all of these systems interconnect with each other and see that bigger picture. But from what you were saying before, it kind of sounds like this shift, we're at this shift now where AI would actually allow us to accelerate and start to automate some of that stuff that is in our little silos that will
And now we
effectively
can move on
break
to the
us free.
interesting stuff.
Exactly. It
Now
can break us free and start thinking about, systems as a whole. So think about that
just
bigger
like
picture.
Leonardo da Vinci. He was a systems thinker. He used to dissect people and and animals to understand their whole, the flesh of I don't want to get too involved, so he could be able to draw and paint better. He had time to do it. Let AI do all the banal stuff that take up our time, and let's use our human brains to be system thinkers instead. I tell you, it'll be much more rewarding.
I know, I get your point there. It's about thinking bigger, right? It's like, yeah, the tasks that we're currently doing can be picked up or can be sped up. We should have more time to think bigger, right? And think systematically and really think about the end-to-end journey. How is it going to impact A to B? Or yeah, what systems can I put in place to enable new projects or new areas to kind of focus on? So yeah, I totally get it, Natalie. It's like, yeah, it's a way to, well, AI is helping us to open up our world a little bit more, right?
Yeah. So yeah, as I say, it's great that it's there, and let's use the human brain for what it was made for, and let AI do the easy stuff.
Well, look, Natalie, I know you and Jay were talking a bit earlier about an AI debate that you were having, right? This was based
Yes.
on a community area that you do, right? So it's Pixel Debates, I believe. Do you want to tell us a bit more about it?
Okay, sure. So I'm a co-organizer of human-centered design that's been here in Dubai and Abu Dhabi for a number of years, and I was thinking of what to do for one event, because we all get okay, this time it's your turn to do an event. And I was walking on the beach, and I was thinking, what could I do? And Pixel Debate actually, I was thinking of it as an event, and I was thinking to myself, no, this can be more than just a HCD event. And Pixel Debates was born out of pure frustration and boredom, to be honest, with repetitive conference formats and meetup formats, to be honest. And I don't know about you, but I just feel that everything's just the same. And I was like, I was reaching a threshold of, I'm not learning anymore. I'm not taking it in anymore. I've been, these conferences, in Dubai, they cost a lot of money and they're all the same. Everyone's agreeing with one another. And maybe it's me personally, but I don't like it when everyone just agrees, because you really don't learn. And I think it stems back to my childhood as well, and my my adult life. I had a long time discomfort of never fitting in and always wanted to agree with people to fit in. But I think come mid-40s, I don't know, it brought kind of clarity and self-acceptance in kind of saying, no, I am a person that wants to disagree to be able to learn. And so Pixel Debate, in a way, was a desire to create a platform that can encourage structured dialogue and openly challenge prevailing norms. Because I don't like normal. That's boring for me. I can't innovate with normal. And so last week, I launched the first Pixel proof of concept last week, and Jay was one of the wonderful debaters who participated, and the feedback has been extremely positive, which is, I don't know whether I was surprised or whether I was expecting it. I think what I heard was that the format was engaging and authentic, and I think there was a strong enthusiasm also from younger designers, seeing more experienced voices on the stage having this type of discussion. Obviously, it's still early days, and not agreeing. It's and Leopold was saying, who was my partner in crime in moderating the debate, he said that you learn with tension, you learn with conflict. And I think today we avoid conflict. And so how can we evolve as a human race if we're always avoiding conflict? If we just want to agree and not cause trouble. And again, I've had this burning inside of me from a very young age. And as I say, I used to get into trouble because of it, because I wanted to engage in a conversation that people did not want to engage in. And I think now is really the time that really people need it. And this kind of links back to my whole alchemist mindset. To have that, you need to be able to have that confidence in speaking and having a structured argument. And what better way to do it than as a debate? Because a debate, ultimately, it's fun. It's fun. It's enjoyable to watch. You want to see a bit of tension. That's enjoyable. I like that. But you know that the tension is not in a way that is offensive or people taking it personally. So that life's too short for low res opinions. Now is the time for high res thinking. And that's kind of my kind of slogan, from low res opinions to high res thinking. If people can start upping their resolution in their thinking, then they can become better strategists, better alchemists, better debaters, and have a stronger voice at the table and be able to influence others with better outcomes. And this is where I would like to take Pixel Debates going forward.
I also think it's a bit of an outlet, right, Natalie? Because obviously the topic that you guys are talking about was will AI lead design, right? And I guess there's two separate views on it. And I think, you're kind of debating it. And I think people going to that, I can imagine myself, right, going to it, I would be thinking, I'm actually on one side of this. And, it would be good to hear what the other side thinks. And I think get more clarity or validate my own current thinking on certain topics, right? So I also think it's an outlet because you can't always talk about those things in the office with individuals always, like, so yeah. Do you feel like people kind of got that side of it as well from the debate?
I think they did. And Jay, please feel free to also say what you think and what you got out of it too from after what people said to you. But there were people who said I was off the edge of my seat, and I'm like, oh my gosh, this is just the beginning because I'm going to amplify this format. You know, on I don't know how much I want to kind of amplify, but I want to amplify it much more. So it's even going to be even more theatrical, not to the point of being, fake or unnatural, but I think that it's energizing for people when learning is enjoyment. And that is what I saw in people's faces. They were learning through enjoyment, through constructive dialogue. And I believe that I'll pick on you, Jay, because you're right there in front of me. I think, Jay, you could have actually debated both sides of the motion if you wanted to. That is actually what you should be able to go and be flexible and be able to talk about both sides of an argument. And that's really the power of great debate. And if everyone can think, okay, I understand why for the motion of why AI would be leading the side, but I also understand why design could also lead design, which is why we don't necessarily say there's like a winner. Obviously, there's a vote before and after, but the real secret to the sauce is that you could actually say, okay, I understand both sides of the argument.
And I think
And
that's
that's
what it
what's
was
really
about.
powerful.
Yeah, I think
Yeah.
that's what it was about. Like, it was about hearing each other out. And like you rightly said, I think anyone on that stage could probably um, debate for either side. Uh, because I think on that specific subject matter, we just don't know what the end result is going to be. Like, it is all just predictions and, like, what do we think might happen? Like, there's nothing conclusive has happened yet because it is still so early. So any one of us on that stage could be correct. But I think it's more so an opportunity for people to kind of have these discussions openly, have some kind of back and forth, and back to your original point, just stop agreeing with each other. Like, I feel like design can be an echo chamber, and everyone
Totally.
just repeats what everyone else is saying, and you just hear the same stuff. Even what you were saying earlier about these presentations at these conferences all being the same, is because it's just the same stuff being regurgitated over and over again. Your forum actually created a space for conflicts safely, and everyone was
Yes.
amicable about it. And I'm looking forward to being an audience member this time,
At
and
the next one.
kind of seeing what the next one is. Yeah.
Yes, I mean, I did emphasize that a lot, that I wanted this to be an authentic dialogue in a safe space where it's okay to disagree. And I think people can feel liberated with that. And not only that, I want, my goal is, and my vision is to have humor and irreverence. Irreverence. When do we ever talk about irreverence? It really, come on, let's have a bit of irreverence in an event with authenticity at the same time. And I think that all of that together can really change the way in which we can have a conversation, and elevate your thinking. And, one of the other I like to use is also like, how can we sharpen your pixels and elevate your thinking and build a community that also has a psychological safety and clear structures and boundaries, but and also have the opportunity where people in the audience can say, oh, I can be on that stage too, or I want to be on that stage. I aspire to be able to speak like they did. And so it's not just, for me, Pixel Debates is more about the event. It's everything that I've been talking about since the beginning of this conversation. In fact, it all links together like a journey to me, and that's this is part of a much bigger experience in helping the not only the design thinking world, but I have a vision to also take this to the wellness and longevity space and other areas beyond design thinking where they would benefit to have this type of conversation as well. So we'll see how we go.
Possibilities. Yeah, definitely. I mean, the possibilities are endless, right? I think it's, you can create any format of it, right? It's just about discussing the different topics and getting those different views, right? That's brilliant.
Yeah, I mean, look, I was talking to some designers as well, and they're struggling to find work, right? We're in a tough market now. Why is that? I'd love your view on it as well, but what I'm hearing is that we've got a lot of supply in the market now. A lot, right? And the AI is being used to automate the recruitment process. So I was looking at some stats. In fact, I've got some in front of me here in a 2025 report for, HR kind of automation data software, but only 12% of applicants on average advance to interviews. So if you're going through the traditional process of going through to a job, it's your odds are just, to actually get that interview are very low. And so Pixel Debates is all about how can you use your confidence to be able to get your way around the traditional normal way of finding a job. And so having, critical thinking, being able to have structured conversation, to be able to persuade, will allow you to have a better influence when you're networking, when you're meeting people, to find other ways outside of the traditional way of finding a job. This is a way to give you that extra human edge. And even when you get to interview stage, using your debate skills around that and having a debate, how do you call it? Debate driven ability to influence and articulate. So I'm looking at all different parts of different journeys and, looking at, okay, how are people applying for jobs today? How can it help you in that? How can it help you when you have a job and you're in a team? How can it help you have a better dialogue with your team? How can you have a better dialogue with your leadership? It adds value on so many touch points.
Yeah, I totally agree with that. And I think, Natalie, you bring up a great point here, right, about the job market and the changes in how we hire people. I kind of see it. I feel like we're going through the same situation that schools are going through right now, right? Or universities. It's like, how do we begin to mark work now with AI here? How do we begin to assess individuals now, right? The traditional task even, I remember applying for a couple of roles, I had to do a task. I had to kind of like, do a whiteboard challenge, whatever it is, right? I could use AI to kind of do that now. So how does that all factor in?
But it's how you talk about it, how you present it, that makes a difference.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's disrupting, right? And it's like, yeah, how do we talk about it? How do we rethink the way that we're doing things? And how do we get others to rethink about the way that we're doing things going forward as well?
It's exciting. I'm exciting, and that is why I suppose I've lived in a consulting world, because it allows me to fly around to different projects and be exposed to really what's happening across the UAE. And I wouldn't say that it's an easy path, because I'm sure, if I can't get a job, what can I do? I'll freelance or I'll consult. But I've been doing it for so long now that I've kind of feel I've toughened up in terms of the world of consulting, because it's not easy for someone just starting out here. Oh, let's consult, because how do you set yourself up? How do you find the right freelance structure or company structure? How do I price myself? How do I go out and find work? But as I say, it's what's helped me a lot is how I can engage with someone, and how I can have a conversation, or how I can articulate an idea. That has helped me a lot. And that's been my driving force. Again, going back to Pixel Debate, because I am still not an expert. And the reason why I'm doing this is I also want to continue my learning through this engaging with other people and listening to them and seeing how they talk. It's a way for me to learn as well, and I hope that others will learn and have a great experience also.
Wow, what a way to kind of close the show on such a human note. I think I think Pixel Debates is amazing, and I'm very much looking forward to kind of seeing what comes next from it. It's just the beginning, and the fact that it's created such a buzz already is super exciting. I think it's shaking up the space as well. So I think definitely you're gonna go on to kind of future successes. We've covered so much in this episode. I don't know how we managed to cram so much into this episode. So for me personally, I'm definitely taking away this kind of alchemist kind of mindset. It's definitely started to make me think about kind of how I conduct myself kind of a bit differently as well, and kind of maybe kind of assessing team members as well on their kind of level of kind of alchemy too. On the topic of kind of Pixel debates, and just before we leave and kind of end the show today, like where can people find out more about it? Where can they find out more about you if they want to get in touch? Maybe they want to debate. Maybe they want to be, or they've got an idea for a topic. So how do they?
Yeah, exactly. Well, I'm people. So I am officially launching tomorrow. I've set up all my socials, and I have a landing page. It's called www.thepixeldebate.com. I'll be officially kind of launching Pixel Debate on LinkedIn tomorrow. And the website will be launched beginning of next week with the first coverage of the initial debate, where you have access to the transcript, the entire video, and also an audio version as well. And that's what I'll be looking to do for every single debate that we have. But that's just the beginning. As I said, I've got lots of other ideas beyond the event format that I'm looking to do. But we'll start there. And see how we go on. And then if you go on the website, you'll see the links to the social channels as well.
Amazing. Thank you, Natalie.
Yeah, we'll link all those websites and socials in the description as well for you, Natalie, okay?
Oh, great. Thank you. Thank you so much.
Thanks for being on the show. Take care.
You're very welcome. It was a pleasure. Thank you for having me.
Thanks, Natalie.